we had gotten word that they were coming.
They came in to murder us in our sleep.
White flag coming out the door.
Every one of them was following my orders, you know. So it was a real prideful thing that went on that long, that they were really carrying out the orders perfectly, the soldiers. And they had us in the glass house. It was still going on, and I was just so proud. I'm still proud of them to this day.
Because of Geronimo's military experience and his leadership, that's what kept us alive.
I joined the service, I got the training, and I came back and did exactly what they told me to do. Teach our people how to defend ourselves from all these lynchings.
3 officers and 4 Panthers wounded in a 4.5-hour shootout.
At the time the tennis court murder occurred, I remember that Pratt came into the Bay Area, that he and Bobby Seale, David Hilliard came over to the place I was staying in San Francisco. We met one evening. The next day and the next 2 days there were meetings at David Hilliard's house in Oakland, and he was there all the time.
No matter what he did in 1968 or 69 as a Black Panther, he was arrested and charged with a murder. He went to trial, and he didn't know the following things. Neither he nor the defense attorney knew that the FBI was communicating daily with the LA Police Department to try to get him arrested and convicted of some kind of an offense.
The fact that the government was spying on us meant that they would watch all of us. It's not a matter of only Pratt. They were watching Bobby Seale, they were watching David Hilliard, they were watching me. They would follow us, they knew where we went, they would tap our phones, so that if all of us come to one house and have meetings for 2 days, they're going to know this.
Nobody knew that the chief witness against him was also an FBI informant, threatened by the FBI with a machine gun charge. He was, Butler was out on parole at that time, or on probation. He was alleged to have had a machine gun. The FBI could have locked him up for 5 years if they'd wanted to. So all of the circumstances were set to create a witness against Pratt who would cooperate rather than go to jail himself.
By the time his case came to trial, the party had been divided. So you could say that as a consequence of Cointelpro insinuations, Cointelpro actions, Cointelpro desires, Cointelpro goals had been accomplished in the sense that the party was split. And Geronimo's trial, Geronimo's destruction, you might say, was a consequence of that kind of activity, because he could not, other than me, get anyone to testify where he was.
I had been telling them all along, the lawyers, and speaking in open court, trying to make these assertions, and they were looking at me like I was ego tripping. That would be the thing I would get back a lot. Niggas ego tripping. And the FBI didn't have nothing to do, care nothing. And so I would cry. I'm in Folsom Prison in a hole. I'm in a hole here. The communication weren't that good. So I tried the best I could. I wrote different people, and to try to expose what I knew, and I knew was FBI involvement.
Pratt didn't know that one of the witnesses had identified somebody else as the murderer a year earlier against him. That didn't come out. He didn't know that the FBI had put informants in his defense camp that were reporting back to the FBI what Pratt and his attorneys were planning and talking about. Clearly, that's a constitutional breach. The FBI, of course, says, well, none of these things really affected his trial. That was just the evidence against him. But the FBI wouldn't release these documents. It took Pratt's attorneys volunteer acting pro bono without fee from 76 until 1979 to drag out of the FBI grudgingly documents that still were heavily censored. You couldn't get certain information because they blacked it out. Finally, when all of the information that could be obtained from the FBI under the Freedom of Information Act was obtained, Pratt goes to the California court and then up to the Court of Appeal and finally to the Supreme Court. And during that process, in 79 and 1980, the FBI said to the state authorities, well, we're telling you all about Cointelpro and everything we can find, but deliberately kept from the California Attorney General and the court the information that one of their own agents thought Pratt had been framed by the FBI in 1972.
So it's a very political situation, very political, and it should have never been really handled. The courts are not equipped to handle a case of this magnitude. it should have been handled on an international level, you know. And this is where we've been petitioning more and more and more. In fact, I was invited to speak in Geneva representing political prisoners in this country just last month. But there are difficulties with that, you know. That it should be handled on an international, broader level where people can understand, because you're like asking Jesse James to adjudicate what his brother Frank James did. It's not easy. We were engaged in a very, clearly a war of survival, a war for self-determination, a war for economic freedom, a war for cultural freedom, to be able to learn things of our culture, to regain our historical identity.
Well, you see, the media has played its traditional role. The white-owned, white-controlled media has played its traditional role back then and today. And their traditional role is to maintain the status quo. Status quo meaning white folks on top, black people on the bottom. So the media did the interpreting of what was going on. And they interpreted everything in the light of how it would impact upon the maintenance of the status quo. Still do it.
So you can see that there is a correlation between the type of illegal and subversive COINTELPRO actions that the FBI wanted to mount against the party and the image that was created in the media of the party. It's okay to do these things to a group of bad guys.
The slave master never liked the slave to get in a defensive position. He's called an uppity nigger and he's lynched. But when you begin to study ways in which to thwart this genocide, these genocidal wars, and come up with ideas, logical ideas, ideas that will work, then you become the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. And if that organization is the greatest threat, then this militant, military apparatus is up for grabs. It's fair game. All is fair in war and love and war. So you get a COINTELPRO, a completely illegitimate thing, and it's thrown at you, and you say, well, you can't cry. You know this is a war.
And that program was intended to be run secretly. It was intended to be run as a counterintelligence program would be run against, say, Soviet spies, that you spread false information about and among the black group so that they would shoot each other.
Well, the FBI would get hotel stationery, type a letter saying that Connie had met with Huey and David, and they were really hostile toward Eldridge, and he should be very careful about how he deals with them. And it would be, the signature would be C. Then Connie would get back to Algiers and tell us about her meeting. We already had this letter. And then she'd say, but I didn't send you that letter. So then we'd say, oh, she's lying.
In one situation, the FBI used a fugitive named George Sams, and they chased him across the country, and they would raid each Panther office just as he left, but they would use his supposed presence there as an excuse.
So the government made it very crucial to their success that it looked as if these things just happened by accident. There was no connection between the plan of the FBI and the fact that so many Panthers were arrested, so many of them went to trial, so many of them marriages broke up, so many terrible things happened. However, when these things are happening to you, you know it's not an accident. You know it's not random. We knew at the time there was a conspiracy. We knew it was planned. We knew it was coordinated. We just had no idea how sophisticated the plan or how sophisticated the coordination was, and or the collaboration between the various agencies. We didn't know it was called COINTELPRO, that involved the Department of Defense, it involved the White House, it involved the CIA and the FBI in coordination. We didn't know all that, but we knew they were doing these things against us. They were doing them deliberately, and we knew that they were wrong.
Well, I felt pretty bad because most of it was really crap. It was a waste of time. We destroyed a lot of lives, and I always deny that.
street. My mama's on this shit, my daddy's split, mama steady blaming me. Is it my fault just cause I'm a young black man?